Welcome to the GMAT Strategy Podcast. You're here because you believe there's a better way to study for the GMAT, and so do we. We created the GMAT strategy to maximize your results and minimize your effort so you can get to the fun parts about business school and life as quickly as possible. My name is Isaac Puglia, and I've been teaching GMAT classes and tutoring privately for the GMAT for almost a decade, and I've achieved a 99th percentile score on the GMAT and helped thousands of students get into the business schools of their choice. I'm excited to be a part of your MBA journey since we all at TGS think our world can benefit from the best possible business leaders that we can find. If this show is bringing you value, please share it with your friends and family who are studying so that together we can make this process as easy and as painless as it can possibly be. Let's go. Okay, today I want to answer a really popular question. I see it online a lot. People ask me, I don't know, thousands of times a year, how long will it take me to study for the GMAT? And then I want to add my own question onto that, which is, can I accelerate my progress? And I want to give you some really, hopefully extremely valuable tips for how to do so. So let's start at the beginning. How long will it take you to study for the GMAT? Quick update to this episode. It's 2022 right now, and we have collected a significant amount of data around which study paths are going to take certain amounts of time, and I'm excited to share this with you. Now, for some of you, this is going to resonate. For others, it's not. That's completely fine. We're just here to deliver the truth to you, and you can do with that what you want. So, how long is this going to take? Well, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. So I'll start with the good news. And the good news is if you're committed to doing this absolutely free, using only freely available resources out there, then you can absolutely reach your dream GMAT score. That is 100% possible. People do it all the time, and you can do it too. Having said that, a little bit of bad news, that is going to be the slowest route for about 99.99% of people. Are there people out there who can just engage with a few free resources, take the exam, and get an insanely high score? Yes, those people have a natural genetic advantage, and that's fantastic. That's totally awesome. If we had that advantage, then we would probably capitalize on it too. If you're that person, then please just do something beneficial for the world with the gift that you've been given. For the rest of us, who statistically speaking are making up the audience right now, so I am statistically talking to you who are not that person. I certainly am not that person. If you know anything about my story, the GMAT was a big struggle for me, but I eventually figured a lot of things out. For us, we might face a little bit of resistance, and that's completely okay. So if you're not in this genetically predisposed, automatically came out of the womb great at standardized test groups, then you're probably looking at around 6 hours of study for each 1 point gain you want to make on your overall score if you're using just free resources and you're committed to spending $0 on your GMAT prep. Let's do a little math to make that more real. Let's say you're starting at a 600 and you want to get up to a 700. That's a 100 point gain on your overall score. 6 hours for each 1 point. That's going to be about 600 hours. Now again, the good news there is if you have $0 to spend on this, great. There's nothing holding you back except you. The bad news is it's probably going to take a while. Now, I've heard people get on webinars and say, oh yeah, on average, most people study for 6 weeks or most people study for 3 months. I have no idea where they're getting that data. In my experience, that is completely wrong. And I don't think it's because they're bad people. I think they're well-meaning. I think they just don't understand how the GMAT is different from other exams. I think they're looking at it like it's the same as some other test that they've taken in their life. And they just assume the GMAT is the same. And that's a fair assumption, I suppose, because it kind of looks similar. The questions look similar, but it's just different. It's just a completely different beast. And I believe it requires a different strategy to really excel on it. So are there free resources out there that can get you where you want to go? Yes, absolutely. There's a ton of really high quality free resources. I would for sure count this podcast as one of those, perhaps obviously. And you're benefiting greatly from being here right now because even if you do go the free route, I'm going to give you some unbelievably valuable advice later in this episode that's going to greatly accelerate your progress. And it's going to give you the best shot at being under 6 hours for each 1 point gain. So just to talk about these numbers, these are just averages. So there's a big range. You might be way faster than that. You might be slower than that. It really comes down to your personal learning style, your ability to stay consistent and stay diligent, and your ability to process and deploy the information that you're absorbing. Most of us are going to have different natural abilities with that. Again, my job is just to present the data to you the way we have analyzed it, and we believe in your ability to go faster than that. Perhaps obviously because we're making this episode for you right now. So again, specifics about how you can accelerate that coming a little bit later. Having said that, in our experience, if you're using free resources, there's going to be a limit to how quickly you can progress. And that's because it takes a lot of time to just gather the resources in the first place, to put them all together. That's one of the most difficult parts when you're working on your own, because you're not an expert in the overall exam yet. You haven't been through this thousands of times with thousands of students like a lot of professionals have. And so some of those realizations and some of those breakthroughs are just going to be a little further apart. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with taking a year to prepare for the GMAT. If you can study 10 hours a week and you need 600 hours, we're somewhere around the 1 year range of studying. And frankly, in my opinion, that's a very small price to pay for the unbelievable upside of getting a fantastic MBA. So now the question becomes, well, what do I have to give in order to get even faster than that, at least on average? And the answer to that usually is some money. If you're willing to spend money, then you can get access to high quality resources that can help you accelerate your progress, give you a more structured approach, and get you where you want to go faster. So moving up the cost sphere from free, we would have printed materials. Now, in the first episode of this podcast, I already gave some recommendations about what I like in terms of printed materials and digital resources and different types of learning styles. And I'm not going to go into that in depth here because I already did. So how much do books usually cost and what can they get you? Well, you can get access to high quality printed materials for free. For example, libraries. Many libraries have high quality printed GMAT materials, and I would strongly recommend going that route if your budget is ultra constrained. But if you're willing to invest in a set of books, then you're probably looking to spend around $100, give or take. That's kind of the going rate. Can you get them cheaper? Yes. Can you pay more? Yes. It's really just about what's going to resonate with you. And again, I already gave my recommendations on that in last week's episode, so please listen to that if you haven't already. Now, what does spending that money, or at least spending the energy to go to the library to get some printed materials, what does that get you? Well, you're probably looking at around 5 hours for each 1 point gain you want to make on your overall score. Again, is there a lot of variance? Is it a wide range? Yes, but if we're looking at pure averages and just to make the numbers easily digestible for you so you can compute yourself and make a great choice about how you want to move forward, we've tried to make these as simple as possible while still being accurate. So around 5 hours for each 1 point gain. If you're trying to go from a 600 to a 700, you're looking at about 500 hours of study instead of 600 hours with purely free resources. So what are you looking at there? That's a pretty significant efficiency gain, somewhere between 10 and 20%. So going from a 600 to a 700, that'd save you about 100 hours of life. And let's just break that down. Think about what you could do in 100 hours of life that you no longer have to spend studying for the exam. Well, I like to break it down by the day. So that would be an extra hour every single day for 3 months straight. So think about what you could accomplish, what you could enjoy in your life with an extra hour a day for 3 months straight. Like imagine right now, if you had 25 hours a day for the next 3 months, what would you do? Think about what an extra hour of sleep would do for you. Think about what an extra hour of leisure activities would do for you. Think about what an extra hour of socializing could do for your life, for your enjoyment, for your career. An extra hour of networking, an extra hour of fitness training. So think about that. You're really buying a lot back. You're buying a lot back by spending a little bit of money or, again, a little bit of energy to get some printed materials. Now also keep in mind that you are giving that up if you go the completely free materials route. So you're basically telling yourself, hey, it's actually not important for me to have that extra hour every single day for the next 3 months. Now, it's not my job here to say whether you should or shouldn't spend money. I'm just presenting you with information that I think will help you personally make the decision that's right for you. And that's what I want for you. I want you to just make the right decision for you, but make sure that that is a high quality, informed decision. The quality of the decisions we make is going to impact the quality of life that we have. So just trying to contribute to your success by sharing this with you. And I wish someone had shared this with me when I first started, because I went the printed materials route and I didn't pick a super high quality set of printed materials. And that cost me at least 100 hours of life. And I hate to say this, I'm probably never getting that back. Now, is there anything I can do about that? Well, I can try to be as efficient as possible with all the stuff I'm doing now. But at the end of the day, I'm at peace with that. That was a mistake, and now you're going to profit from that mistake. And that means a lot to me, so it's not a total loss. But let's be honest, if you have the choice now, which I'm giving you, would you rather have that 100 hours or not? I don't know what your budget is. I don't know what's worth it to you or not worth it to you. But I know this stuff. It's not costing me a whole lot to deliver it to you. And again, I just want to treat other people how I would have liked to have been treated if our roles were reversed and you were advising me. So let's say you want to go faster than that. What are your options? Well, next up in the cost sphere would be digital self-paced classes. Now, there's a wide range of what you can spend on these. I would estimate that there's somewhere between the $100 and $1,000 range, somewhere like that. So let's let's ballpark it on average around $400 or $500. And again, I gave plenty of advice about this last week, but if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us anytime. So what does spending that extra $300 to $500 beyond just investing in a set of printed materials get you? Well, if you're doing the self-paced digital thing, then on average, we've seen about 4 hours of study for each 1 point gain you want to make. So if you're going from 600 to 700, again, you're talking about 400 hours rather than 500 with just the printed materials. So now you're buying back an extra hour every single day for the next 6 months of your life. So you just think about, what could I do with that? And is that personally worth a few $100s to me? Now, there's a lot of different ways you can quantify that. I don't even know if it's important for you to quantify that. But if it is, one way I like to think about it is I'm spending $500 to get 100 hours of life back. Basically, I'm buying those hours at $5 a piece. And I think about, what could I do with that time? And is that worth more than $5 to me? Like, is an extra hour of sleep worth more than $5 for that hour? Is an extra hour with the close people who I value in my life worth more than $5 an hour? Would I pay more than $5 an hour to get an extra hour with those people? Would I pay more than $5 an hour to get an extra hour in the gym every day for 6 months? Again, this is your decision. I'm just giving you some ways that you can make it wisely. If I spend an extra hour at work every day for the next 6 months, could I make more than $500? Could I get a better return on that investment? At the end of the day, that's what this whole thing is cost-benefit analysis. So what if you want to go faster than that? Well, then you get into the live class realm. Now, with the massive shifts that have happened with COVID, there's a lot more online live classes than there used to be, but there are still in-person live classes available. And if you want my recommendations on those, again, just go back to last week's episode and I'll walk you through what I think is best. How fast can you go with those? Again, these are just averages. This is not a guarantee. I'm not saying that if you log 500 hours with a digital self-paced class, you're definitely going to get a 100-point gain. There's a lot of variables in that equation. I'm just saying that's a reasonable expectation. It's realistic, and it would be unrealistic to say that you're going to do it in 200 hours. That's certainly possible, but you would be seriously defying the odds at that point. These live classes where you get to interact live with an expert, someone who's well-trained, someone who's very knowledgeable, someone who can answer your questions in real time, maybe even customize your study plan based on what they observe working with you live, that's worth a lot. And so you're moving up in the cost sphere. Those are somewhere between the $1,000 and $2,000 range. So you're spending, let's say on average, an extra $1,000. What does that get you? Well, you'll probably buy back another 100 hours at that point. So you're probably looking at about 3 hours of study for each 1 point gain you want to make on your overall score. Now, why does the cost not just increase linearly? Well, I'm sure we could have a healthy debate about that. But most speed increases require an exponential shift in energy. For example, think about the difference in energy output of walking down the block versus sprinting down the block. If you're sprinting, you're maybe going 4 times faster, but you might have to give 10 times the energy output or 20 times the energy output. Some of this is just laws of physics, the way the human brain works, the way the learning process works. It's just part of the deal. So it's not a linear increase in price usually. And again, price is relative. What's high is going to be low for some people. What's low for some people is going to be high for others. But right around in that $1,500 range, you're buying back another 100 hours or so of life at about $1,000 for those 100 hours. So now you're paying yourself $10 an hour. So you can ask yourself the same question. Is getting an extra 2 hours every single day for several months worth $10 an hour to me? Now, of course, if you average that with the $5 an hour and the $10 an hour, you can compute your weighted average and you can figure out exactly what you're paying yourself for that time. I'm not going to get into that math here because some of you care and some of you don't, but if you're classy in the streets and a freak in the spreadsheets, much respect. So just to share some of my thought process with you, I look at the important people in my life and I say, would I pay $10 an hour or more to get extra time with these people? Or if I log an extra hour at work, can I make more than $10 an hour on that investment? Or if I start a side hustle, or if I start looking into real estate investing, can I get a better return on my time? Because if you can get a better return on your time somewhere else, now it's irrational to try to save that money and not invest it in a faster approach to your GMAT prep. And that brings me to an important point, which is you might be thinking about what you're spending on your GMAT prep as an expense, but that's probably not a productive way to think about it. You want to think about it as an investment. Sure, business school is not cheap for most people. But the question is not, is it cheap? The question is it worth it? Do I get enough of a return on that spend in order to justify the expenditure? If business school just cost a couple $100,000, but you never earned that money back and you'd got nothing out of the experience, well, then it would be a terrible idea. But all you have to do is web search Forbes top business schools and you can see right next to the GMAT score what you're looking at in terms of a monetary gain. Okay, and that ignores the personal gains of getting to live where you want, getting to do the kind of things that you want, being surrounded by the kind of people you want to be surrounded with, doing the kind of work that has the impact that you want to have. It can be difficult to put a price on those things. Some of those things are priceless. So if you've been thinking about this as an expense, I would recommend shifting your mindset there and think about it as an investment. Back when I first started studying, I looked at my GMAT prep materials as an expense, and that really cost me in the long run. I wish I had invested more from the beginning. That would have saved me a lot of time. And I could have done more with that time if I wasn't burning it just studying for the exam. Okay, so that's how live classes work on average. Again, not a guarantee that if you log 300 hours in a live class, you're going to get a 100-point gain on your score. It's just a reasonable expectation. Moving up the cost sphere, we get to private tutoring. Now, most solid private tutors can get you into the 2 hours for each 1-point gain range. So we're talking about now 200 hours of study to go from 600 to 700, which is a massive efficiency gain from where we started. Versus free resources, we're talking about a 3x gain in efficiency. And so most reputable tutors are going to charge for that. And again, only you can decide if it's worth it for you. Most tutors for a start-to-finish program, you're looking at somewhere between $3,000 and $10,000. Now, there's a big quality gradient as far as tutors go. Some tutors really command those high prices, and a lot of them, frankly, deserve it. Do some people overcharge? Yes, absolutely. And do some people undercharge? Yes, absolutely, they do. But we're not really here to discuss pricing psychology. We're here to discuss whether it's worth it to you to spend that extra money to get that efficiency gain. At this point, you're choosing to spend, let's say, on average, about $5,000, which would be about $3,000 to $5,000 more than you would spend on a live class. And so now you're buying back time at a rate of $30 an hour. Is that worth it to you? It might be. If you're earning more than $30 an hour at your job, then you probably hate the idea of earning $30 an hour. If you're only earning $10 an hour at your job, then maybe spending $30 an hour is totally impractical for you. Again, I just want you to have options, and I want you to be aware of what those options are. If you're okay going slow, I want you to know that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to go faster, I want you to know what are the most believable options for making that happen. Now, if you want to go faster than that 2 hours for each 1-point gain range, then I'm just going to level with you and tell you that I don't know anyone outside of TGS who can do that for you. Our obsession is efficiency, our obsession is speed, and we invest heavily in making sure that we can provide those kinds of results for people. Now, is that a fit for everybody? Definitely not. We're totally at peace with that. And honestly, this isn't a pitch for our program. But in a way, I would be lying by omission if I didn't at least tell you that it's possible to progress around 1 hour for each 1-point gain you want to make on your score, okay? I just want you to know that's possible. It might not be a fit for you. You might not care about that. And it might not be worth it for you personally to invest with us. And that's why we make all this free content for you. And so hopefully that whole spectrum of price and speed makes sense. Hopefully I've laid that out clearly for you. And if you need more recommendations, go ahead and reach out to us anytime. So believe it or not, I actually tried to update the rest of this episode, but I couldn't get a recording that was better than the original. So I'm just going to port you back over to myself 2 years ago, who's going to walk you through some super powerful tactics for free that are going to help you accelerate your progress, whether you go the book route, the free route, the self-paced class route, the live class route, or even if you're engaging with a tutor, we're going to give you some tips that'll help out a ton. So reach out anytime and enjoy the rest of this episode. Now, let me give you some general keys to cutting down your study time. So even if you are going to go the free prep route and you're not going to engage with an expert, you're not going to spend money to hire a tutor or get an online class or anything like that, let me help. So one key to accelerating your progress is very counterintuitive, but it's probably the most important, is you want to avoid the trap of doing too many practice questions. I know that might sound crazy, but the key is not more problems, it's fewer problems, but with more review of each problem. So who's the wiser person? The person who does 100 problems and learns 10 things, or the person who does 10 problems and learns 100 things? That's an extreme example. Obviously, if you have a strong opinion that more problems is better, then try it out. And if it works, it works. You know, I'm not saying that this is going to be the perfect approach for everyone, but this is what I've seen work for the most number of people. So what is fewer problems with more review? Well, for each math question that you do, and let's say you're using something like the official guide, and you don't have a class or an online class that's giving you answer explanations for every problem you do. If you don't have that, then it's a good idea to put the problem into a web search and search the forums and see if you can find some alternate explanations. Now, the explanations in the actual official guide itself are not particularly good, in my opinion, on the math side. And I'm going to do, I think, a full episode on how to find good answer explanations, but the best recommendation I can make quickly is buy a product from Manhattan Prep called the GMAT Navigator. I think it's maybe $50 or something like that. and it will make studying out of the official guide probably 2 to 10 times more effective for you. I am not affiliated with Manhattan Prep at all. I recommend a lot of Manhattan Prep products because I did work there for a long time. I'm very familiar with their products, and also I think they make really good products. Now, I don't recommend every single product that they have, but I can strongly recommend the GMAT Navigator. If you don't want to spend that money, then use the internet to your advantage and try to find some video explanations online. Khan Academy has some from the 11th edition of the official guide. Magoosh has some online from the 12th edition. I haven't been able to find a great free resource for video explanations, so if you have it, drop one in the comments or ping me on Facebook or drop it on my Instagram at the GMATstudy. And let me know, because I would love to have a good video resource to point people to. But the GMAT Navigator is a good middle of the road. And what you're going to want to do is, as you go through your math problems and you find these alternate explanations or these best approaches or just approaches that aren't intuitive for you, you want to take the problems that aren't easy for you, the trickiest ones are the ones that contain these valuable strategies, and you want to start a list. And you want to track several things every time you do one of these problems. You want to log the source of the problem so you can go back and do it later. You want to log the date that you did the problem last and how long it took you. You want to log whether you got it right or wrong, and you want to log what you should remember next time you see the problem. And what I would recommend is the first maybe 5 to 10 minutes of your study session, maybe more, as you get closer to your exam, spend time resolving those questions. I think one of the things that people do wrong the most often when they're studying for the GMAT is they just focus on new problems, without really taking the time to go back and master the questions they've already seen. And I think what you'll find over time is that the GMAT is really a big game of pattern recognition. And if you can associate a current problem with a problem you've seen before, you're much, much more likely to get it right and get it right quickly versus if you have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, on that particular problem. So even if you can just borrow pieces of strategies from problems you've seen before, you'll find that that gets you pretty good results over time. I've found that the best way to develop that pattern recognition, as I've said a couple times now, is not just doing thousands and thousands of questions, but finding the right balance of fewer practice problems, but deeper review and revisiting those problems more and more. Now, on the verbal side, what I would recommend is spend time on each practice question you do, either using a web search or using something like the GMAT Navigator or the official guide explanations. I think for the verbal portion of the exam are actually not too bad in the back of the official guide. They're certainly much better than the math explanations, in my opinion. What I would do is make sure you can explain why every wrong answer is wrong. Make sure you can explain why every wrong answer is wrong. Now, with verbal questions, I don't make as strong of a recommendation that you keep a list and go back to those over time, because that's less effective in my experience, resolving verbal questions. However, it can be very effective to keep a list of verbal questions to go back and re-explain. So you look at the question, you're like, okay, this one's B, it's not A, C, D, or E. Can I look at these answer choices that maybe a week ago or a month ago I knew exactly why they were wrong? Can I re-explain that to myself now? And that challenging of yourself to recall why certain things are right and why certain things are wrong on the verbal section, or what the best strategy is on a math question, that challenging yourself to recall that is going to imprint that information on your brain in a deeper way than just doing tons and tons of new problems, in my experience, and also in a way that's going to be more transferable to the GMAT. Now, in line with that philosophy of fewer practice problems, but with more review, I make the exact same recommendation when it comes to practice tests. And so many people ask me, how many practice tests should I take? I think most people are going to be pretty good in a range of somewhere between 3 to 10 practice tests, maybe 3 to 12, if you are reviewing them deeply in between. Now, just taking practice tests, this is important, just like practice problems, just taking practice tests doesn't necessarily make you better. Just like just doing practice problems doesn't necessarily make you better. But it's a very easy fallacy to succumb to, because our brains, for some reason, have this metric like, oh, I did 100 problems today, I must be 100 units better at the GMAT. And I wish it worked that way. I wish it was that simple. All of our lives would be so much easier if it were. And the same is true with practice tests in my experience. Now, there are a small subset of people, unfortunately, I think they're disproportionately represented online in forum posts. But there are some types of people out there who can just take a bunch of practice tests in a row and do really well on the exam. And that's awesome. I mean, that's that's like being a super gifted athlete and like you have to train 1/10 of the amount that your competitors have to train and you get the same results. If you're in that boat, that's fantastic. You probably have very few worries when it comes to studying for the GMAT. I would estimate that that's less than 1% of the GMAT test taking population is in that boat. So statistically speaking, from my estimate, you who are listening to this right now, you're probably not in that boat. And so you're probably going to want to optimize for fewer practice tests, but with a deeper review. What are the things that you want to look at when you're reviewing a practice test? Number one is you want to make sure that your pacing strategy is good enough and that you're not running out of time really early in the section. If you are, you want to practice timing a lot. And a good way to practice timing is just pick some questions from the official guide and go through them sequentially. You can do 5 questions in 10 minutes or 10 questions in 20 minutes and practice pacing yourself. Practice cutting yourself off when you don't know how to do a question, and practice maybe going a little bit longer on questions that you think you can get with a couple extra seconds. But overall, just making sure that you're not over-investing too much early in the section and then running out of time at the end, which is a big killer of GMAT scores. If you want to know why, I've got a video actually on my website at the GMATstrategy.com where I go into some of the intricacies of how the algorithm works. It's about a 45-minute presentation that goes into a lot more than just how the algorithm works. But if you want a little bit more information on that, I would recommend that video. When it comes to the second thing to check for practice tests, you want to prioritize timing, but then you also want to make sure that you're not missing questions you know how to do. So if you are missing questions that you know how to do, which is extremely, extremely common, particularly on the math side for most of us, because there is so much time pressure, then you want to make a separate log for those types of questions. And when you do those questions, you want to come up with a new habit that's going to help you prevent that mistake in the future. So for example, let's say I missed a question because I read the problem incorrectly. Well, I need to come up with a strategy that's going to help me with that. Maybe I need to read slower. One thing that I've found to be particularly helpful is making sure that I'm writing down a lot of information, because I'm taking the test on a computer, and usually what makes it to my scratch pad is what makes it into my brain. And if I don't write enough down, I'll often forget things that are on the computer screen because I'm doing most of my figuring and working of the problem on the scratch pad. So writing more down can be extremely helpful with things like that. But overall, you just want to make sure that you're logging questions that you're missing that you knew how to do but got wrong anyway. Because most people are just going to gloss over those and be like, oh, that was such a careless mistake, I just won't make that again. But if you think about some of the bad habits you have in life, if you just tell yourself to stop doing that habit, I mean, how does that usually go? It usually doesn't work that way, you know? Usually we have to come up with a new habit to interrupt that behavior, and even that can be extremely challenging. Change is just something that can be difficult as a human being. So give yourself maybe 1 to 3 times to make those types of mistakes, and then you have to sometimes be really hard on yourself to implement those new habits so that you're not missing questions you know how to do. Now, I won't say this too much, but I'll say it right now. If you're missing questions you know how to do, then you theoretically cannot hit your peak score. Your score will never reflect your abilities, your actual abilities, if you're missing questions that you know how to do. Now, we're all human. Most of us are going to miss 1, maybe 2 questions per section just because of human error, and that's fine. You know, giving yourself that 1 to 2 questions per section is okay. If you're missing more than 2 questions per section, your habits are probably not good enough to maximize your score truly. Next tip in terms of reviewing practice tests is make sure you understand every single question in your practice exam before you take a new one. Most people end up not learning as much as they can from each practice test and just hoping that the next practice test is going to be better, and that usually is a bad strategy. Instead, you want to make sure that you've made substantive changes in your skills and your knowledge of the exam between each practice test. Otherwise, the next practice test probably won't go up. Remember that the definition of insanity is expecting different outputs, but not changing the inputs. If you haven't actually improved your pacing, if you haven't actually created new habits to keep yourself from missing questions you know how to do, and if you actually haven't learned how to do every single question that you've seen previously and put the toughest ones in your review list and come back to them over time to really integrate them, then your score is probably not going to go up on the next exam. Now, one of the frustrating things about the GMAT is that even when you do everything right, sometimes your score doesn't go up, and improvement is generally not linear with practice tests. So it's okay to plateau for a couple tests, but the main thing you want to discover is why. Why is my score not moving the way I want it to go in between practice tests? That's just hugely important. Maybe goes without saying, but I see a lot of people who know what they should be doing, but they don't do it anyway. And so I would strongly recommend not being one of those folks. Now, the last thing I can recommend, particularly on the math side, but it also applies to verbal, that can really cut down on the amount of time you're going to need to hit your GMAT goal, is make sure you start from the beginning of your prep, or at least today, if you're already way deep into your prep, make sure you are practicing quality scratch work techniques. This is just unbelievably, inescapably important in my experience, particularly on the math side, if you want to maximize your score. The metric I give people for assessing whether their scratch work is clear enough is someone should be able to look at your scratch work after the exam or after a practice problem and be able to tell exactly how you thought about the problem just from looking at what's on the paper without asking you any clarifying questions. I know that might sound extreme, but this is a really, really tough test. And I think you need sometimes extreme measures to make sure that you are absolutely maximizing your score. And if there's one thing I see too few people doing well, it's quality scratch work. If you are struggling with quality scratch work and you feel that is slowing you down too much, then the thing to do would be take time pressure out of your practice some questions untimed, and then give yourself maybe a week or two to develop speed with your new scratch paper habits. That goes for when you're testing numbers on questions. Make sure you have an organized system for testing numbers and it's not just throwing a bunch of stuff all around on the scratch page. And don't be afraid to slow yourself down and spend 5-6 minutes on one question, really making that detailed, and then get faster over time. And then eventually you can introduce time pressure after a week or two of doing untimed practice with scratch work. Now on the verbal side, I'll give you a couple tips for scratch work there. It's usually much less important than on the math side, but one recommendation I can make is take some very, very bare bones, simple and shorthanded notes when you're reading comp passages and when you're reading critical reasoning questions. Can just be few words, couple symbols, something like that, just to help you capture the main idea. And so that you're not having to hold every single thing about the passage or the argument in your head while you're answering the question. Second, I would recommend tracking your answer eliminations on every verbal question. So write down A, B, C, D, E on your scratch pad and just cross off as you go. It might seem like a waste of time, but as you do it more, it'll become super familiar and it'll decrease the cognitive drain, the cognitive load that you experience having to hold things in your working memory during the exam. And over the course of a 3, 4, 5 hour exam, if you have extended time for the GMAT, that can really, really add up. So if you have questions, let me know. You can reach me on Facebook, you can reach me on Instagram, and you can reach me on YouTube at the GMATstudy. And I do my absolute best to keep up with comments. If you haven't heard back from me, I probably just didn't see it. So just ping me again, and I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can possibly get to. As always, my greatest hope is that this podcast will make your studies as easy and as painless as possible. If you want more tips and strategies for optimizing your performance on the GMAT, head to the GMATstrategy.com and check out my video presentation on how to achieve your dream score in half the normal time and with half the normal effort. And in the meantime, this is a weekly show, so please subscribe. And until next time, stay positive and stay consistent. I'll talk to you all soon.